All right, let's talk about something you probably have in your kitchen right now, cooking oil. We're going to dig into a pretty startling argument from our source material today, one that might just change the way you look at your pantry. Let's get right into it. So, let me just start with this one question, and it's a wild one. What if that bottle of vegetable oil you use for everything, what if it was never actually meant to be food? I mean, what if its original job was, lubricating industrial engines? It's a shocking idea for sure, so let's see how this argument is actually built. And this really lays it all out, doesn't it? On one side, you've got the image we all know. Vegetable oil sounds healthy, natural, comes from plants, right? But on the other side is the history our source presents. Industrial waste, engine lubricant, a chemical product. It's a total disconnect, and that's exactly what we're going to explore. So how in the world did we get here? How did something that was supposed to be an industrial product end up on our dinner plates? Well, this next part of the story is called The Birth of Fake Oil. Okay, so the story goes something like this. Back in the early 1900s, you had cottonseed oil. It was actually a toxic waste product from making cotton, and it was used to make things like soap. Then, during World War II, rapeseed oil, which is where canola oil comes from, was a superstar as a lubricant for naval ship engines. But then the war ended, and suddenly companies had a massive surplus of this cheap industrial oil and nobody to sell it to. They needed a new market, and that new market was us. It was our kitchens. So these oils were chemically processed and got a total rebrand as a healthy new food.
But how do you even turn an engine lubricant into cooking oil? Well, according to our source, it's a pretty intense process. First, they use a petroleum-based chemical, hexane, to literally force the oil out of the seeds. Then, to get that chemical back out, they have to blast the oil with super high heat. The thing is, this leaves behind a dark, stinky oil that's already gone rancid. It's gone bad. So, to make it sellable, they bleach it to get rid of the color and then deodorize it to hide that awful smell. And what's left is that perfectly clear, tasteless oil you find on the shelf.
So that's the historical side of the argument. But it doesn't stop there. There's also a biological argument, which frames this whole thing as a huge and kind of scary experiment. Let's look at what's called an evolutionary mismatch. To really get this, we have to zoom out, like way out. For 2.5 million years, human bodies and our genetics were shaped by the food we could hunt and gather. And our source argues that a huge part of our diet, a key fuel source, was animal fat. Our bodies are literally built to recognize it and use it. And now, look at this. Compare 2.5 million years to less than 100 years. That's how long we've been eating these mass-produced, chemically made seed oils. It's not even a blink of an eye in our evolutionary history. The argument here is that our bodies just haven't had time to adapt. They don't see this stuff as food. They see it as a foreign substance. And what happens when you put a fuel into an engine that it wasn't designed for? Well, according to the source, the results are not good. We're talking widespread chronic inflammation and something called oxidative stress, which is basically like your cells rusting from the inside out. The source makes a direct connection between the rise of these oils and the explosion of modern health problems like autoimmune diseases, dementia, and obesity. Okay, so after laying out all those problems, what are we supposed to do about it? Well, the source doesn't just leave us hanging. It proposes a solution, a kitchen revolution, which is all about getting back to what it calls real food. And here it is, a super simple, actionable guide. On the right, you've got the toss list. That's all your common seed oils like soybean, canola, corn oil, and so on. And on the left, you've got the keep list. These are traditional animal fats like butter, lard, and tallow, plus a few specific oils from fruits. So what's the big difference here? Why are these okay? Well, the argument is that animal fats are what our bodies evolved to use, and they're stable when you cook with them. And those fruit oils, olive, coconut, and avocado, they're different because you get the oil out by just pressing them, the old-fashioned way. No chemical solvents needed. And that brings us to the final point, and it's a big one. It reframes this whole choice around money and asks us to think about the true price we're paying for cheap oil. Look, we all know that a block of real butter costs more than a giant jug of vegetable oil. The source gets that, but it wants us to think about the long-term cost with this quote. What's more expensive? A few extra dollars for butter today, or tens of thousands in hospital bills tomorrow? It's really framing this choice as an investment in your own health down the road. So that's the argument we wanted to lay out for you today.
We've gone through the history, the biology, and the proposed solution from our source material, and it leaves us with one final question. It's your kitchen, and it's your body. What are you going to choose?